Dogs, man's best friend. People love dogs and dogs love people. Often the dog of the house is like one of the children. When a dog passes, it's really hurtful for the people who own the dog. A final example of that fact in pop culture is John Wick. That man's dog got killed, and well, he took his revenge. He's on a killing spree that will soon have its fourth outing in the franchise. And that man has a gun and a pencil. Not really superpowers. Wanda does. Her children do. Her husband does. So I don't know if that last line of this week's episode was a very smart thing to say. Hello and welcome to the Review of Champions. Today we are going to talk about episode 7 of Wandavision, currently streaming on Disney+. Before we begin, I would like to invite all who are listening in or watching us to join our community. Go to our forum on Sakar, make an account, chat us up, and if you're willing, you can be on the podcast or review yourself. We're open to anyone and we would love to see you there. Well, this week's panel, let me introduce it. With me are, back from Hades, I guess, Lord Deathman.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for the warm welcome back, Grandmaster.
You're most welcome. Our man with the hat, I would like to say, but I'm also wearing a hat today. But it's Taylor first.
Hello, everybody. Let's go.
Yes, let's go. And last but not least, we have a very busy man, our Arch Stanton.
Howdy, sir. I am opposite Lord Deathman's Hades up in the frozen tundra of North Dakota, where it's been -20 all week. Yay!
Well, let me give a small summary of the episodes. Episode 7 of WandaVision shows us the day after the night before. Everybody is licking their wounds. Wanda seems to lose control over the hex. Hayward is planning his revenge. Jimmy and Monica are making their way back into the hex. And Vision and Darcy are trying to make sense of it all, as are we. We're going to take a deeper dive now into the episode, and we're going to talk spoilers. So if you haven't seen the episode, go do that first, and then come back to watch our review. With that being said, I would like to give the word to our first panel member, and that's Archie this week. Archie, well, we had a lot of build-up the last few weeks for certain characters in the show, and well, actors have been teasing them online as well. Do you think we have them all now, all the characters, or will there be more? I'm thinking especially about the aerospace engineer. What are your thoughts?
I think there's a couple shoes left to drop here for sure. I'm gonna go a little light on the details here and just try to focus on maybe two. I think the aerospace engineer is something that's coming. They mentioned that 2 episodes prior to this one we just watched, so I think there's something to that. I don't know what it is, and I don't really want to speculate too much, but I think something's happening there for sure. I also still think there's something, further behind all of this. I'll drop a theory here in just a minute to kind of wrap that up. So I'll get back to that in a second, but I do think there's something else behind all of this still. As far as just general, surprises or twists, there's a ton of stuff we don't know about yet. We still don't know exactly, what started this all off. We don't know who is really in control of what. So, how much of this is in Wanda's control? How much of it is in Agatha's control? It's still a little speculative at this point. What is Tyler's real goal here? What was he doing with Vision exactly? We don't know these things. And I really have no idea what he was doing. But some of these things are going to come to light for sure as we head into the last couple of episodes. So I'm really looking forward to that, and I'm curious what you three have to say about that. But the theory I wanted to sort of propose, which ties into another character that we might see, is I think what's happening now. I've been saying the whole time that it's all about the children, and I really think that at this point, I think, by hook or by crook, Wanda's been led into having these kids so that Agatha could get them, so that she could get them down in that basement use whatever book that is. I'm just gonna call it the Darkhold for now. I'm not sure if it's the Darkhold, but I'm just gonna. It's possible. It's very possible that that's what's going on, and that she is summoning something and using the kids as fodder for that to bring that thing into being. I'm gonna go back to the Mephisto idea. I think there was a key element that we saw there. The fly on the wall. I know you guys have probably seen that filtering around the internet. Max and I were actually talking about that in length on a phone call, and I think that is really crucial for those who might not know. Mephisto's first ever appearance in the comics was as a fly, so I think that's a little more than coincidence. So I'm looking forward to that. The other big key to this, I think, is Quicksilver. You saw him pop up at the end. I am going to speculate that we don't know who Quicksilver is. I could be way off here. I think he might be Blackheart. Blackheart is the son of Mephisto, and I think he could easily be working with Agatha to trick Wanda into getting these kids, to growing them up in this hex, and to using them and the Darkhold to summon back Mephisto. That's where I'm going with this. I'm not sure how much truth that's going to hold, but I'm really feeling he might be Blackheart, and that's what they're up to. Take it away.
Interesting theory, and yeah, I'm thinking in the same directions as you are, especially since Billy, aka Wiccan, in the previous episode, was accused by his brother Tommy that he thought Pietro was a vampire. That can't be a coincidence as well, especially since Wanda now basically confirmed that man is not your uncle. But we'll go we'll talk about that a little bit later, I guess. Taylor, I have the feeling the sitcoms are over after that big reveal at the end. Did you get any last sitcom vibes, or do you think they will still continue? What are your general thoughts about the episode?
Yeah, I think starting with the next episode, we're not going to see the sitcom format anymore. This season, or excuse me, this episode, of course, was virtually present day, mostly influenced by Modern Family, also Parks and Recreation and The Office. The opening credits were quite reminiscent of The Office, especially the music, but still being uniquely WandaVision, as all of the opening credits have been. They've all been influenced by specific sitcoms, but they've all also been very uniquely WandaVision. But yeah, I think that's probably the last of the sitcoms, although I do think might see some more, Easter eggs, some more references to sitcoms along the way. In this one also, when Agatha All Along theme song played, that when the first few notes played and when the font for her title appeared on the screen, it was very Munsters reminiscent, right? The music and the font was quite reminiscent of the Munsters. And I also want to put a shout out to, there was a reference to Star Trek. Monica Rambeau's uniform was a Starfleet uniform. Okay, it looked very much like a Starfleet uniform to me. All right, that's all I'm going to say about that. Other than that, I don't think, like you said, I don't think there's going to be any more sitcom stuff, at least not as overtly. Like I said, there may be some small references here and there. I'm very interested to see the opening credits for the next episode. I think it could be more Marvel MCU type opening credits coming up. As far as the episode, it's it's incredible. I'm not even going to begin to guess what's going to happen. Grandmaster, you said there's more shoes to drop. I think there's an entire shoe store that's going to drop in the next 2 episodes. I don't think we have any idea what's going on. I mean, we do know that Agatha has been manipulating things along the way. Her purpose, her reason, who she works for, we don't know any of that. And can't wait to see. I'll pause there.
Yeah, earlier online, and I tagged Arch in a tweet today. Somebody had actually seen in the end credits that the singer of the Agatha All Along song, you know who it is? It's
No.
Catherine Hahn herself.
Hmm.
So that was really funny to me, and actually, again, another mind-blowing thing that's going on. Yeah, I also agree that there is a lot still going on that we don't know, but that's why we make this review, right? To speculate a little and to see if we come up with theories. Of course, not too wild. Well, speaking of Agatha Harkness, Lord Deathman, you as our resident comics expert, what can you tell us about the character? Is she the main antagonist, or is there more in the cards? And yeah, I have something about Agatha later, but I will let you talk first.
Well, Agatha is a character that's really been attached to multiple characters and team affiliations in the Marvel Universe. She has connections to Mephisto, Dormammu, the Salem 7, Shuma McGrath. So she kind of goes all over the 616 universe in the comic books. And she's always sort of the secondary threat, usually the person in front of a larger threat. So I think the fans are probably on the right track when thinking about the fact that this could be Nightmare or Mephisto sort of endorsing her activities in the Westfield anomaly. But that being said, there's still something that doesn't quite sit right with it, even though we had this sort of big reveal and you saw that she confesses to being the one who's behind it all. I still think that there's a further threat there, and that she might not be as antagonistic as the reveal of the end of the current episode sort of sets up for us. But yeah, I think her first appearance was actually in a Fantastic Four issue, number 185, and that just goes to show you, X-Men, Avengers, Fantastic Four. She really is all over the map in terms of it, which makes it interesting because it could be any number of threats or new characters introduced really organically into this without it feeling like, oh, that's strange from a comic book point of view. In the comic books, Agatha's on the older side. In fact, I believe she's like tens of thousands of years old as a sorceress, sort of practicing dark magic and such. But it's interesting to see how the MCU renders her as the more younger, vivacious Catherine Hahn sort of character that's full of life and kind of not hunched over and giving you the evil eye. So they dispensed with the old witch stereotype, which I think was a good move as far as reinventing the character. But as far as the episode goes in general, I have to say that I do feel we might have peaked with the last episode in terms of my like the ever escalating greatness of WandaVision. Here, I felt like this episode was really good. It was very strong, but it did feel like we had to cram in a lot of business here because we're winding down. We're getting close to the end of the series. So we have a mini origin story to do with Monica. We also have there's just a lot going on in this. It felt like they crammed it in with Agatha's reveal. I don't know. The pacing felt a tiny bit off on this episode, and it did reference an era of sitcoms that I'm neither familiar with or that I probably would be the biggest fan of. If you sat me down and forced me to watch like hours and hours of Modern Family or The Office, those probably wouldn't be my all-time favorite sitcoms. But I have to say they do bring the action, the adventure. They're blending this sitcom mashup with the MCU kind of superhero story extremely well. I really like the sequence where they had to sort of drive their version of the tumbler and try to penetrate the barrier and have the truck halfway transform. Monica's origin does feel a bit rushed, and it kind of feels like, okay, this is set up for someone to become a superhero, but at the same time, I do feel like she makes for a good superhero once you dispense with the freak accident sort of origin that is compulsory in the genre. So those are my overall thoughts. If I was giving this like a 1 to 10 sort of grade in terms of episodes of WandaVision, this would probably squarely fall at an 8, whereas the other episodes have been averaging 9 or 10s in terms of being nearly perfect in terms of the blend of both sitcoms and the genre, superhero genre as we know it and understand it. So I have to say that for the next coming 2 episodes, there's a lot of theories out there. And as you guys know, the fans are endlessly speculating about this show. And it was kind of nice to see that we've reached a point where like half of the fan speculation is now defunct. It's like, okay, you could put away your theories of Reed Richards coming in, or maybe he comes in a little later on. But if you just do a little sort of chronological math, the announcement of the Fantastic Four was just in December, and they wrapped filming on this like in 2019. So it would have been hard to do a Reed Richards insert in there unless Kevin can really foresee like months and months in the future what he's going to be planning and announcing with sharp confidence. But like I said, nice to see some of the really wild speculation coming off the table, but fans are determined to guess what's going to go on till the very end. And we've got, I think it's 2 more episodes left, guys, but you guys can keep me honest on that one. So we have a lot of story to tell because we still don't really know much of anything, despite all of the many reveals, all of the accidents. Another downside of this episode, a slight downside, was the kind of repeat confrontation of Monica and Wanda. I'm like, okay, we did this before, but now we're doing it again in a slightly different context, and she's wearing different clothes. So again, I do feel we peaked with that last episode, and we've headed into a slight valley with this one. But I think the next 2 are going to be showstoppers. I'm speculating, which I rarely ever do, that the next episode is probably going to take a time jump and take us back to whatever started all of this or precipitated it at the beginning. And then we're going to get probably a longer finale episode that takes us into pure MCU action with Wanda and Vision as we know it and love it from the MCU. But those are my overall thoughts on the character and the episode.
Excellent answer, as always. Yeah, well, you said Agatha Harkness first appeared in the comics in a Fantastic Four issue.
I believe so.
Yeah, I actually read something about that. She first appeared as the governess of Franklin Richards, the son of Sue Storm and Reed Richards. And do we remember the name of the agent that went in through the sewer and turned into the beekeeper? He was called Franklin. Just to say, they did a nod there. So I wouldn't put it beyond Kevin Feige to actually bring in Reed Richards at this point, especially since, yes, the main filming was done in 2019, but there were extensive reshoots in the second part of 2020 as well. So I would not be surprised if they bring in Reed Richards, because Jimmy is still on the outside, that thing didn't work. So maybe he comes in that way to find a way to get into the hex or something. But before we go into too many speculation, Arch had a comment, so I will give the word to Arch.
Yeah, just when he was talking about Monica, when Deathman was talking about Monica, I do agree. It kind of, she kind of jumped into her powers. We knew that was coming, and then it sort of just happened, and they kept going with it. And I had this sort of immediate thought that she might not quite be done yet. like we saw her eyes, we saw her like do a little superhero land where she had some powers, but I wondered if she had maybe one more stage of evolution left before she kind of got to her full on wherever they're taking her set of powers. But even if she doesn't, I do think she's got a bigger hero moment coming up where she kind of really shows off what she is. So I'm looking forward to whatever that goes, or wherever they end up taking her. But there was one other thing I was thinking about, a really kind of cool part of the episode that I hadn't discussed earlier, and that was how they treated Vision. I like how they really got into sort of some psychological territory where Vision, when he talked about hearing the history of himself, but that it seemed like it was another person. Like, somebody was telling him what he had done, but it felt like they were just talking about a completely different individual, because he'd been, basically at this point, his mind has sort of been reborn. So he doesn't remember that like it's himself. But then he had the perspective that Wanda would take all this much more personally than he would at this point, because she does feel like it's herself. So I thought that was some pretty deep analysis from a robot, some really good perspective psychologically on how people think and how people can feel about certain situations. So I thought it was cool to see him put himself in her shoes for just a moment there.
Yeah, it's. I think Vision has also been slowly building up as somebody who is, well, maybe I wouldn't say not on Wanda's side, but doubting her motives and what she's doing. And I think this moment he started to realize that that Wanda has serious issues a few weeks after his passing, basically. For Wanda, at least, she feels it's a few weeks since she has been snapped, of course, and brought back. Taylor?
Yeah, I agree. The portrayal of Vision's empathy for Wanda's situation was really excellent. But actually, I had another question I wanted to bring up in reference to the commercial for the antidepressant Nexus. Can one of you, maybe Lord Deathman, refresh us on what is the significance of the word Nexus in MCU or Marvel as a whole?
Right. That might be a big bag to unpack, but essentially the Nexus is probably a reference to the Nexus between universes. So it's the kind of central portal of where you can access all of the universes that encompass the 616 multiverse in the comic books. So the idea that's been floating around that Wanda might be a Nexus being, a Nexus being is someone who can freely traverse all of those universes using the Nexus, and may only exist in one universe, but can go into several others. So they're a unique being in the sort of cosmology. But that being said, that's essentially what the Nexus is. There are a couple of other Nexuses in the Marvel universe, but that's probably the one they're referring to, Taylor.
So the hex could also be the Nexus, or a portal to that Nexus?
I think the Nexus is going to bring us to the point where Doctor Strange has to intervene in all of this, and turns out to be that launching or departure point into Doctor Strange 2. So they're setting it up very well, and it feels really organic. You have a magic player in Agatha Harkness who is high level in the Marvel universe, and I don't think that Wanda is practiced enough to take her on, even though she might have enough raw power. But surgical skill is going to be needed in this particular situation.
Yeah, you could see in the very short clip that Agatha is very well skilled, at least. I don't know if her powers match Wanda's, but her skills definitely do. Well, Taylor?
In the last split second of the episode, if I recall correctly, prior to the credits rolling, she seemed to put a hex or something on Wanda. Wanda sort of had that purple glow around her face and her eyes shined. It seems like Agatha put her into some sort of spell at that point. And then, of course, we had the roll credits.
Yeah, you get the Agatha All Along song, which I absolutely adored, by the way. Yeah, Agatha put a spell on Wanda, like Wanda did on Tony Stark in Age of Ultron. The first time you see Wanda use her powers. Is that the first? Yeah, first time.
Yeah, it is. The first
Yeah.
time she used them, she exhibits mind control.
Yeah, I think there's a little scene with Steve Rogers first, but yeah, it's basically she controls Tony with the hand movement. I think Agatha did basically the same thing to. She is showing Wanda what Agatha has been up to, or what Agatha wants her to see she's been up to. Taylor?
Yeah, also later on in Age of Ultron, she did that to almost all the Avengers, making them see their fears and become incapable of protecting themselves when they were caught in that web of fear. And I just want to point out the one that she wasn't able to do at that point was Hawkeye, who was just too fast for her and stuck in a shocker arrow into her head before she was able to put the whammy on him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hawkeye, another show coming. Well, let's not get into that right now. What do you think Arch touched on this a bit. What is happening to the kids at this moment? Lord Deathman, any idea?
I think the kids are being siphoned for whatever abilities and powers they may have by the uber villain. They've been spirited away and they're probably in his care. So I don't know if it's a situation where he wants to leech their powers or abilities or sort of recruit them into his, press them into his service. And I'm assuming that the uber villain is a he, but it could just as well be a she or a non-binary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Could anybody be? And you don't know how they identify, of course. But
right.
That's true for everybody nowadays. Since that, I want to continue on this. Arch, maybe you have further thoughts. Because in the song, it actually said that nothing can be fixed anymore. So, are those kids gone for good, or? I don't believe that.
I don't know. I've got. This is where my sort of speculation in, and I threw out that theory earlier just kind of for fun. That's sort of like the most rational sense I could make of it if you asked me to make some rational sense out of what's going on. But I mean, the kids could be some sort of battery right now for whatever is behind this or whatever Agatha is trying to bring about. It could still just be Agatha by herself. I really don't think so at this point. I'd almost be surprised if it is, but it could be. There's also a chance I'd considered that the kids don't make it out of this. Like that the goal is to use the kids to manifest whatever entity is behind this, and that by doing so, those kids no longer exist, and that eventually, maybe in Doctor Strange 2 or later on somewhere down in the MCU, that they're able to defeat this entity and you get these kids back, but by then they're in some completely different form. You wind up with them as adults or significantly older teenagers or something like that. I don't know. We might be done with the kids as we've seen them. They might not be rescued here. I don't know that for sure, but it's possible.
It would be very tragic for Wanda because it's also been established that Vision cannot leave the Hex. At least that's what Darcy said. So that would mean she loses her husband again for a third time, and then her kids as well. That would be very, very, very tragic. That could lead into a mental breakdown, and it could very well be they're going that direction for Doctor Strange.
I did want to just touch on one other thing just regarding Quicksilver real quick and the idea of
one moment, because Lord Deathman had a follow-up on this subject. Sure. Then I get back to you. Lord Deathman?
Yeah, just really quick. Just based on what Stanton said with regards to, are the kids going to get fridged, right? To sort of further Wanda's own tragedy, I do think that there's a high probability of it. I think that we're at least in for two more big surprises out of the series before it concludes, and I don't think the kids are going to stick around. I could be wrong about that, and they may, as Stanton said, take on adult incarnations in the regular universe, but people would always be questioning the nature of their existence, right? They're not people from Westview. They're total fabrications that Wanda brought into existence. And you don't know if they're a product of magic, of science, a little bit of both. Um, it would be very different for the MCU to sort of take on these spontaneously created beings as full-fledged characters. But we'll see which way it goes. But I'm betting that the kids do get fridged.
Well, if that happens, the MCU goes darker than any other franchise has gone before, killing off kids. But anyway, Arch, you had something about Quicksilver.
Oh yeah. So the reason I kind of came to the Blackheart idea, and it could be something slightly different from that. That was just the one that settled on. I settled on as most likely, but I'd seen the idea of the Nexus floated around before, which I think is pretty fascinating and highly likely as a thing that this hex transforms into and leads into other films. And just as a concept for the entirety of Phase 4 and beyond, but. The reason I kind of settled on Blackheart was the idea that's still persisting that this version of Pietro is somehow some sort of multiverse entity, not necessarily Foxverse, but in that direction. And I still don't really see what the point of that would be. So I'm kind of leaning against that just from the fact that I really don't think that they're have any intention of making Fox canon in any sort of way, even vaguely. And even if they did, I don't think they're going to use it going forward. So I just don't really see the practical purpose in doing that. And if you have an entity that's going to make obviously not her real brother, Quicksilver, you don't need the multiverse to do that. So I just don't see much of a point in doing that. But it's not impossible. They could have something completely different going on that I haven't even considered, and they actually are doing that. But I still do like the idea of the Nexus and then having it come about. I just don't. I think I just wanted to reiterate that I think the Pietro thing is more of a Easter egg for the Foxverse, and that what they're doing with him is probably a completely different character. And I started to ponder what other characters would want to bring about a Mephisto type entity. And I thought, oh yeah, Blackheart would be a guy who would want to bring about Mephisto. So that's how I kind of wound up with that.
Okay. Does anyone have something to add to this week's review we haven't touched on?
Just a last comment on our science-based villain, our director of Sword, who seemed to have plans for Vision, that a part of this could have all been started by the fact that they were trying to reanimate Vision, and this cataract program of bringing about Vision as a sentient weapon in the service of Sword. This may have been the thing that precipitated the whole thing, that kind of maybe drove Wanda over the edge. We do have a precedent in the comic book where Vision is reanimated, but without all of the humanity and the thoughtfulness that we're used to in the character. He becomes sort of an automaton. And, perhaps Wanda, seeing him sort of reduced to that basic machine-like level, could have precipitated this whole thing, attracted these extra-dimensional entities that see this huge power output from one individual in the MCU and say, well, that's interesting, right? We didn't know we know they have wizards, and we know they're fighting intergalactic despots, but reality manipulation is a whole new level in terms of what humanity could be up to. And I could easily see someone like Harkness or Mephisto glomming onto that and wanting to use it, but not being able to directly confront it because it's just so much raw power to deal with.
Taylor?
Yeah, I think one of the storylines that is going to be expanded on is the director. What is his plan at this point? But I also just wanted to point out that a lot of people were speculating that the last 3 episodes were going to be an hour long each, and this one was not an hour. It was 38 minutes, with including the credits. So I think that the next episode will probably be about the same, leaving the final episode to be almost a full-length MCU movie by itself.
Yeah, there's indeed. It has been said. The whole show is about 6 hours long. Well, they always count the credits, and a lot of people are annoyed by the credits. But that the credits in total take about an hour as well. So you have like maybe 1.5 hour left in in the last episode for indeed a shorter but full-blown Marvel movie. I have the feeling that the next episode will be, as said before, I think by Lord Deathman, kind of like episode 4, where you get where you saw what has been happening outside of the Hex. For Monica, Jimmy, and stuff, and we will get that now for Agatha and maybe that big entity that is coming. We get a sort of episode like that before we get to the grand finale, because basically the board has been set. It's just the pieces have moved in to where they need to be, and yeah. I think we will get a little flashback episode, or at least partially in the next one. But that's just what I think. Who am I?
What do you think the title of the next episode will be? Because all of the titles have been very meaningful up until this point.
No idea. Really no idea.
Yeah, have they run through all of the sitcom tropes in terms of titles? They might have. Like I said, I'm not too familiar with modern sitcoms, so there might be new devices that make for great titles in this situation. But yeah, I'm always looking forward to whatever the next title of the episode is going to be. So
yeah. Well, I think that will conclude our review for episode 7. Before we finish, I would like to ask you to hit that subscribe button and notification bell on YouTube, or follow us on Twitter or Instagram. Like our Facebook page. Join the forum on Sakar. That way you will never miss us, and we don't have to miss you. Thank you, and see you next week for our episode 8 review. Bye.